The time is 6:38. We're going to take you back to the situation in Egypt now. As we've been reporting, there have been further clashes between pro- and anti-government demonstrators in the centre of the Egyptian capital, Cairo.
Yeah, eyewitnesses say shots were fired and there have been reports that at least 4 people were killed in Tahrir Square.
Well, the journalist Nabila Ramdani, who writes extensively about Egypt, is here. Nabila, thanks very much for joining us this morning. I know you've been talking to friends and colleagues in Cairo and the rest of Egypt. What have they been saying about what happened overnight?
Well, it's very unfortunate to see that I have friends who 2 days ago were demonstrating hand in hand, as it were, with one aim in mind, to see President Mubarak leave. And now 2 days, and now yesterday, we've seen them actually fighting each other, and it's it's very sad and very unfortunate.
The army seems to be key here, doesn't it? Because at the moment the army is saying it's not going to get involved and it's standing back, but with pro-Mubarak and anti-Mubarak forces openly fighting in places like Cairo and Tahrir Square, it'll be very interesting to see what they do next.
You're quite right to say that the army is going to play a very crucial role indeed, but it has a very ambivalent role as well, because it's very odd to see an army not resort to force, it has to be noted. And at the same time it allows clashes to happen, and it seems to me that it's a very clear tactic of divide and rule when you introduce agents provocateurs to diffuse and indeed prevent a mass demonstration from gaining further momentum.
We were seeing pictures earlier of what's happening in Tahrir Square at the moment, and there is, after last night's violence, an uneasy calm, but there tends to be more violent demonstrations happening later on in the day. I mean, they're 2 hours ahead, aren't they? What are you hearing about what the plans are?
I think
as far as the demonstrations are concerned.
People are determined to try to see Mubarak leave, but it's going to be very hard to achieve now that we're seeing that people are divided between themselves, and it's almost mission impossible now.
What should the role of the international community be? We're hearing President Obama saying reform needs to happen now, but he doesn't want to call yet for Mubarak to go.
Well, that's the grim irony of it all, when you have the Americans being very nervous to see effectively a dictator leave. And the speech of the Obama administration has evolved throughout the events, as the events unfolded. And first of all, they said that Egypt was still a stable country to begin with. They then pushed for reforms to be introduced. They then urged Mubarak to move to an orderly transition, whatever that means.
Yes.
But they're not calling him for unequivocally to leave.
No, and he has said that he will go, but only in September.
But clearly that's not good enough for the Egyptians.
But how can they force him to go?
Well, I don't think they have any interest in seeing him leave, because Egypt is a key country in the region. They have many interests there to protect, not least of all make sure that their ally in the region, Israel, is indeed feels secure.
Yes.
It has a border with Gaza, which is also crucial. A 30-year peace agreement that needs to be maintained as well, and the Suez Canal, access to the Suez Canal,
So
which is
need
crucial.
Egypt to be stable. OK, Nabila, thank you very much for coming in this morning. Journalist Nabila Ramdani, who's written extensively about Egypt, who joins us this morning. Nabila, thanks very much for joining us. A very bitter atmosphere we've been hearing overnight in Cairo's main square. The role of the army is going to be crucial, really, isn't it? Whether they intervene or whether they still stand back as observers.
Indeed, and its role has been very ambivalent so far. It has pledged not to use force, which is a rather odd thing for any army to do. And if anything, it's a clear sign that the regime is being threatened. And it's very clear that President Mubarak's regimes felt very threatened indeed 2 days ago, when all people across Egypt were demonstrating together in unity with one aim in mind, to try to force him out. And now citizens are fighting each other, and it's a distraction, dare I say, from the main aim.
Yes, we know that President Mubarak has said in the past he has a PhD in obstinacy. One wonders what his tactics are going to be next.
I do not think he's very much in control of what's going to happen next. It's very clear that the future of Egypt is not being decided on the streets of Egypt, but between generals in Washington and Cairo. It's no coincidence that the Egyptian Army Chief of Staff was in Washington when the demonstrations started. 2 days ago, a top US general was flown to Cairo to have private talks with President Mubarak. So it's very clear that the Americans are very nervous to see a dictator go.
Although President Obama is saying he wants a meaningful transition to start now, but they've been very keen not to say we need President Mubarak to stand down.
But that's classic US pragmatism, dare I say, backing both horses, being on the side of the demonstrators and urging President Mubarak not and the army not to resort to violence and further crackdown as we've seen in the past, and also asking Mubarak to do something.
The men who came in on horseback and on camels with whips yesterday into Cairo's main square, who were they? From the people you've been talking to?
It's very unclear who these people are, but one sure thing is that the army and indeed the police, which is, by the way, nowhere to be seen, have let these people bring horses and camels, and so they're letting people, they're effectively allowing chaos to take place.
You've spoken to friends in Cairo. What are they saying about whether this is going to continue, bearing in mind now it has changed in terms of the atmosphere? It seemed, as you were saying, quite peaceful, but yesterday it turned very ugly.
It did turn very ugly, and it's very unclear where this is all going. But what's definite is that the clashes that happened yesterday took some diffused, if you will, the main aim of the demonstrations, which have been going on for days now.
Nabila Ramdani, thank you very much for coming in this morning.